And welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for September 25th, 2024 regular council meeting. I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the land on which you are gathered as the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And as you may know, September 30th marks the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I encourage our entire community to wear an orange shirt this Monday and participate in the Spirit Walk, which will be happening from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And people can come and go as they please, but you can go to the Florence Filberg Center and you'll be given a path to walk. So, and in recognition of this important day, the City of Courtenay will also be raising the Every Child Matters flag later this week on Friday. The flag honors the children who were forcibly taken from their families and communities to attend residential schools, many of whom never returned home. It serves as a powerful reminder of the injustices Indigenous children and their families have faced and continue to face. With that, we will move into the adoption of minutes from September 11th. And are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll accept our minutes as presented, and we'll move on to delegations. And we have the Comox Valley Food Policy Council, and I believe Naomi Robert will be coming and speaking. And if you just push the little microphone button there, and your
red means go, right?
Red means go,
as is tradition. Okay, great. Those are the slides. So my name is Naomi Robert. I'm here on behalf of the Comox Valley Food Policy Council to give an update and a bit of a review of some of the work that we've been up to, and then provide and highlight some ways that we can be a resource to the City of Courtenay moving forward. So it's been a while since we touched base with council, and we wanted to drop in, say hi, some of the work that we've been doing, and give a bit of an overview. I'll echo an acknowledgement of the lands where we are standing as the unceded traditional territory of the Comox Nation, who have stewarded these lands for abundance since time immemorial, and I'm really grateful to call this place home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the work that we're doing, and then we'll be at 10 minutes, so it's going to be pretty short. We are a forum for advocacy and food policy development regionally in the Comox Valley. Working towards three pillars: ecological sustainability, economic viability, and social justice within the food system. Governance-wise, we are a hybrid of civil society organizations and government. So we have appointed seats for elected officials in each of the local governments, the RD, as well as the school district. And then we also have a number of seats dedicated to community members and community organizations and other relevant food policy and food stakeholders, including Island Health, farmers, food distribution, food security NGOs, so a really broad representation. And our goal for that is to bring a number of perspectives into the food policy work that we do. And we are administratively housed in Lush Valley Action Society, with funding partially from the CVRD. So Lush is our administrative host, but we have different terms of reference. And the Food Policy Council is really focused on informing policy processes, policy implementation and development. Lush has a lot of work on the ground with program and implementation around food security. We do collaborate, but we are separate in that respect. The ways that we work, providing input into local government and regional processes. We consider any matters that are relevant to our mandate. Sometimes we do take policy advocacy positions and work at other jurisdictions, provincial, federal, if they align with that mandate. We have two ongoing priorities, and these have remained the same since our establishment in 2019. And those are, again, to support planning processes at the local and regional level, OCPs, agricultural area plans, regional growth strategies, as well as more specific policy planning processes in local government, and to advise on the development, engagement, and implementation of policy. We also have some priorities that will change sort of thematically from year to year, although there's been a significant consistency since 2019. A number of these have stayed the same, but it gives us an opportunity to update our thematic priorities based on the context. So emergency preparedness, which is focusing on food security and resilient supply chains with the emergency planning context. Ecosystem resilience, this is a new priority that we identified in our strategic planning session this year to focus on, and really bringing a water lens to drought planning and recognizing how central water is for community well-being, for food, for everything that we depend on in our community. So really trying to focus there around drought planning and drought response efforts moving forward. School food has been a focus as well. So access to healthy, culturally appropriate food within schools, and then food access and agency. So poverty reduction, Indigenous food sovereignty, and household food security. Our work, some of which has been with really great leadership from the City of Courtenay, particularly around OCP review. The Food Policy Council came into being at a similar time as the last OCP review, and we were able to provide support and guidance on the food systems chapter, as well as more particular policy recommendations and development for urban agriculture policy. We also will work and put input on the agricultural area plan, for example, or working with the town of Comox on providing input into their master trail plan as well. So we will work in different levels of policy process development. And occasionally, when appropriate, we will work with provincial and national coalition building. Some examples here, particularly with the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and working locally with the municipalities and the RD to send letters to the Prime Minister for advocating for a healthy school food program, which if anyone have their finger on the pulse of school food, it's been a really exciting year for that, thanks to this sort of local coalition building from coast to coast to coast. I'm not going to read through all of these. I'm going to highlight some of the things that we've been up to in some of the thematic areas, but there's more text for reference. Emergency planning, in collaboration with the CBRD and LUSH, we've received funding from a funding application from the Investment Agriculture Foundation to map food flows in the Comox Valley and try and understand how food flows and community storage can inform emergency planning moving forward. And that was really inspired by some of the responses experienced in COVID and the food supply chain dynamics there. We've also submitted and advocated for increased resources and guidance around emergency planning from the province with respect to food. School food, we have two subcommittees. One is school food and one is municipal planning, and the school food committee has been quite active working with the school district. Some examples, particularly input into the role of and advocating for a full-time director of food services at the school district. So that's been on their plate, and they've been working hard in collaboration with the district. Some work on poverty reduction, putting input into the poverty reduction strategies, as well as some coalition work with the Tamarack Institute. And then local food procurement, a number of local governments were interested in how can we impact local food economies by procuring food within either city operations or on city property locally. And we've been exploring some options with the town of Comox, and then most recently with the village of Cumberland, we had a successful grant application to work with them to really develop local food procurement policy, investigating precedents, trying to understand what other communities are doing, and creating some options that might be appropriate in their context as part of their social procurement plan. This is reaching back a little bit further than the kind of 1 year, 18-month mark, but there's some exciting things that we have been up to as well, some of which I have highlighted, but I am likely close to time. So I will just wanted to highlight that we, thank you so much for having us. We are an active and engaged food policy council on the island, and we're really here to be a resource for city council in any way we can to advance policy and planning in our region. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Naomi. That was an excellent presentation, and you got in right under the wire there. So I really appreciate that. And it's great to see the work that continues to happen. I mean, and getting these updates is absolutely critical for us just to make sure we're understanding stuff. Some as you said, some elected folks get to go to some of these meetings, but some don't. So it's great to get this this presentation. And with that, I'll look to any of my council members that might have any questions. And I don't see any. So you may have answered everybody's questions. I don't know if you have any big asks, but I see that you got your microphone on again. So.
Oh, I didn't realize that required effort from you to make that happen, but thank you so much. Just if anyone would like to get in touch or has any ideas, Councillor Morin does sit on the Food Policy Council. You can also get in touch with us directly. That's what I wanted to add.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Thanks so much. All right. Have a great night. Next, we have the Comox Valley Arts Update, and we have Jennifer Casey, I believe, is going to come up. And again, if you push the little button there, we'll get your microphone. You can put it up where your cup is there. Sometimes it sits up there too. I'm not sure if I think the cable can go up there. I just don't want you to knock over any. We'll start your time when your mic goes red. How's that sound?
Great.
All right, Jennifer, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mayor, Council, and staff for hearing our delegation today. I'm Jennifer Casey, the ED of the Arts Council, and I'm joined on Zoom by Jemima Thomas, the interim ED that's stepping in for a year while I go on maternity leave imminently. Today's presentation, we're cramming 3 things into a short 10-minute presentation. So it's going to be brief. We're providing an annual update on our work for the past year. We're providing a report on our fee-for-service agreement with the city, which was just extended through December of 2025. Thank you. And we're providing a smooth transition, hopefully, by introducing you to our interim leader. You are all very familiar with the work of the Arts Council, but I will read the mission that has guided the organization for the last 56 years. We support, promote, and celebrate our vibrant, inclusive arts community. We actively educate and promote Comox Valley as a creative and dynamic arts producing center. Over the past 2 years, CB Arts has refined, deepened, and made more impactful its work within the community. This is reflected in data, but also anecdotally from artists, members of the public, and our own community partners. We've seen growth across programs in terms of participation, but we are also witnessing more than what data can tell. Specifically, we've made strides with community partnerships. CB Arts functions as a sort of organizational glue that is bringing people and organizations together to build something that's greater than the sum of our parts. There's not going to be enough time to go through all of our programming for the past year, and so we've provided you with our annual report, which has a lot of beautiful, flashy photos, so you should all take a read. We'll be pulling out just a few highlights today. But I just wanted to reiterate that 10 minutes is not enough time to talk about all the amazing things we do. It's helpful to just know that our work as the Arts Council is difficult sometimes to understand because we're not a bricks and mortar institution. And it's broken up into 3 distinct areas. So advocacy, programming, which is led and managed exclusively by the Arts Council, and then partnerships. We're going to start with advocacy. So, sorry guys, skip the page here. Our advocacy work this year included supporting recreation, culture, and community services on the cultural plan, convening stakeholder organizations, supporting the survey process through promotion, and offering insight along the way to staff in the Nordicity team. We also started some conversations around the need for a public art policy for the city. Our work to create a best practices handbook in mural development aims to provide a roadmap for folks in the community seeking to create more murals. It champions the value of hiring professional artists, the need for a cohesive strategy on public art, and the strong need for community engagement at the heart of a public art program. We see the potential economic benefit to the Comox Valley having a renowned public art program as a destination driver, but also to create a sense of place for residents and visitors alike. But we also know the underbelly here around partnering positively with the business community, which is so critical. The difference between a billboard and a glorified piece of public art, and the complications of using art as a bandage for systemic local issues. This is why we see the Arts Council is uniquely positioned. We can help get this job done. We've also been convening nonprofit partners that share an interest in the Duncan Commons plan, and we want to help create an arts-based public space in the heart of downtown. We're not alone in wanting this. This process has been a little slower than we anticipated, but by holding hands with our partners, the Art Gallery, BIA, and Elevate the Arts this summer, we hosted 3 events off of the side of our desks called Summer Pulse on the Plaza. This project has fired up our partners. We're all aligned, we're ready to work together and deepen the success of this program next year. We're writing grants already to the Community Foundation. Programmatically, CV Arts packs a punch for $200,000 of an operating budget. Our programs, starting on page 9 of the annual report, if you're following along, include providing a regional studio tour for the Central Island area with Courtney at the center, offering a small grant program that funds artists and community members seeking to provide participatory arts-based opportunities to members of the community over the summer season. Whoop. This is what happens when you get mixed up. I have to read from my slides here. Sorry, everybody. Providing a low barrier recording and digital tech studio to artists in the community to up their game, called the Digital Creation Hub. We offer professional development programs for artists to advance their skills, market themselves, and deepen their practice. And we provide a roving art wagon that can show up to events across the region, offering pop-up art opportunities. That's just what we do in-house by ourselves. But due to our small capacity, myself and a part-time staff person, a great deal of our work is done in partnership with other organizations. This allows us to leverage our team's skills and extend our mission far beyond what we are capable of doing alone. Partnerships are detailed on pages 19 through 26 in the annual report, and I'm only going to touch on a few. We've provided more spaces for local artists to show work with a new partnership with the Chamber of Commerce's new space. This offering is filling a gap. And Susie's probably going to be like, don't talk too much about this, but there's not enough time for me to lament the lack of a community arts center in our town. I just want to plant this seed with council because you guys are looking at the strategic cultural plan later on today in the agenda. It might be longer than a 10-year timeline, but how cool would it be to have an arts center in our town? We could do so much good with that. Anyway, another hugely successful partnership was with the Mikisew Métis Association, which is one of the partnering organizations offering the Spirit Walk on the 30th. The Mikisew, along with CVOX and ourselves, piloted Ancestral Echoes, which is a program that partners elders with young people to create an intergenerational story sharing podcast. We received a grant from the Community Foundation to extend this program to seasons 2 and 3 this fiscal year. 2 of our participants are on this slide at the bottom. It's Bryce and Ava, and they're making Bannock together. It was a really beautiful program for everybody involved, from the elders to the participants to the organizers. So we're really excited to be able to continue that. So this was a very quick summary of our programs, and we're into goal 2 of our little talk today, which is talking about our fee-for-service agreement. So as mentioned at the top, our fee-for-service agreement has been extended through December of 2025. And we are really happy about this because the strategic cultural plan is happening around the same timeline. So this is excellent convergence of timelines here. It's an opportunity to align with our work. And in your packet, we provided a very detailed report on our fee-for-service agreement, the current one, which has all of the deliverables that are listed in there, tracked along a timeline. That's how we report to city staff. So we wanted to provide council insight on where we stand with that existing fee-for-service agreement. It was also authored during the pandemic, so it's out of date and needing a little revisiting. Okay. We have found many areas where the Arts Council is able to help the city achieve its goals as laid out in the drafted cultural plan. When we're ready to have this conversation, we know we can help deliver. This slide here, although it's very small and hard to read, lists the work that the Arts Council is already doing that aligns with specific goals in the cultural plan. So this is excellent. We're already doing some of this work, and it's a great opportunity to build from there and help the city achieve what the strategic plan is setting out to do. There's only one thing that I want to say on the financial slide here, and that is how incredibly important funding is from the city. Without municipal support, we would not get the grants marked by those sweet 3D glasses there totaling more than half of our operating budget. Combined with our license of occupation and free use of the city building, the city is the primary reason that we're able to be an impactful organization. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say that Comox Valley Arts is one of the strongest arts councils in the province outside of major municipalities like Victoria and Vancouver. So it's a pretty special thing that we have here. But also add that because of successful grant writing over the past few years, we're in a really stable financial position. In order for me to step out for a year, that feels good. We have not just one full-time staff person, but two, which gives us more capacity than we've had perhaps ever over this next fiscal. So it's an exciting time. Anyway, I'm probably very close to being beyond time. So before wrapping up, I want to introduce Jemima Thomas to you. This was part of the purpose of going a little bit beyond my mat leave, was to be able to pass off the Arts Council to council here today. And it's just really important to our board of directors, to me personally, that the investment that the city has made in the Arts Council is in good hands. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Jemima, who's on Zoom today. She's packing up all of her belongings and moving here over the weekend. So Jemima, I'm just going to pass it off to you to close us out for the day.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to meet you all via Zoom. I hope you can hear me right now. I'm going to go ahead and highlight some of CV Art's key goals for the next 12 months. These include that we will build on the success of our past programs, meaning for the coming year, we will provide the same programming as fiscal year 23-24, but with the addition of using data to inform how we deepen and grow. Another key goal is that we are seeking funding to support and expand major programs. Additionally, we will be expanding promotional networks and continuing to improve internal operations. Looking ahead, what can our community expect from CV Arts in the near future? This might look like more art wagon sightings in the Valley, deepening our reconciliation work with key partners, and expanding our summer festival series, Pulse on the Plaza. Finally, for a last update, we are incredibly excited to partner with the city on the mural at the Link Youth Centre. This project continues our advocacy work as a case study for community engaged public art. Painting is scheduled to begin in the spring, led by artist Emily Thiessen. Thank you so much for hearing for us. We will now take questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your presentation today and for all the work you do. As you mentioned, the Comox Valley has an amazingly strong arts community, and it's something I'm very proud of, and I think our council is as well. So, I'll look to my council members if anybody has any questions. And we have Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Welcome, Jemima. Good to see you. Look forward to meeting you in person. I have a couple questions. One of them, in the annual report, I noticed in the public art section, there is a focus on murals, which is great. Are there conversations happening around sculpture as well? I'm a real sculpture lover when I go to cities, and there's just such an opportunity with the variety of artists we have in the Valley.
Is my mic on? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Morin. Yeah, I would love to have a conversation about art as a whole, but murals is an urgent conversation.
Mhm.
We see murals happening all over town. They happen very quickly.
Yeah.
And there is a real opportunity to create an economic benefit with a cohesive public art strategy. Murals feels like I wouldn't say low-hanging fruit, but an easy place to start. And we've been involved with, thanks to the city, 2 case studies here. So the city, of course, with the Link Youth Centre, that one will be painted in the spring. But we financed a mural at the Immigrant Welcome Center. And we had a robust community engagement strategy that required artists to talk to the Link students, not 1, not 2, but 3 times, to check in to make sure that the composition, the message of the mural was reflected in the community of which it was serving. And to us, that's so important as part of a public art program. We need to make sure that the work that is representing us, that is all around us, is representative of us. So I would love to have sculpture as a subject of conversation. This is really designed as a first step in a longer process.
That's great. Can I have a couple others? Is that
A
okay?
couple. Wow. Okay.
Art lover.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we have some projects coming up that would really lend to some public art, some sculpture installation. The other, I guess the other thing, when you talk about partnerships, it's great, the partnerships that you've developed. And there are, I mean, I know you can't do everything because there's just so much to do and very little resources. I guess I'm curious about partnerships with, there's a lot of focus on visual arts, obviously digital technology and things like that as well, and a bit of performance. But I just wondered how far you branch out. I was at the writers anniversary, which was really amazing because, you know, they had an original member of that group. It was like their 60-year anniversary. And then I guess just a lot more of the performing arts. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there is an organization called Performing Arts Comox Valley that prior to my time at the Arts Council popped up, I think because the Arts Council wasn't doing a good enough job supporting them. So it is definitely on my list and on Jemima's list of things to hold hands out, right? To reach out. What we can do right now from a promotional avenue, which is, as you saw in our mission, one of our primary areas of work is to promote the arts and to hear about what's going on and spread the word. So we have a community calendar on our website. We send out an amazing newsletter bi-weekly, trying to do that every week. And we're trying to get folks to come to us with what's going on. It's hard for us to have feelers everywhere. We do the best job that we can, but we try to highlight what's going on in the poetry community, in the writing community, in the performing arts community, because those are amazing, robust communities here in Comox Valley and in Courtenay. But it's going to take both parties coming to the table, you know, so
For sure.
first steps, definitely hear you loud and clear.
And the last thing is just really a comment about the art, the sort of the satellite feature of what you're doing, like the art wagon and going into Lake Trail Community School to do or to support the family art nights and things like that. I think improving that accessibility to arts, because it often feels like something you go to on a school field trip or whatever,
Yeah.
but you're not like engaged in the art community, in a community, like in a broader community sense. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Excellent. And just because you had mentioned the you know, not being able to get all the information, just serendipitously yesterday I was at the museum talking about how to get a little bit more I guess pop for the elasmosaur, which is now the official BC fossil. And I did mention to them that there, you know, potentials around murals and other wayfinding things to really amplify that as another reason where we can take some art and something that is not necessarily art, but still very cool and possibly do something. And there's a big brick building just waiting for something to happen to it, from my eyes anyways. But yes, thanks so much for your presentation today. And really, again, thanks so much for what you do for our entire community and for your acknowledgement for what the city does to help support you. Really appreciate that. Thanks. All right. And with that, we'll move on to 5.1.1. But before we do, Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I will recuse myself from this item. I have a conflict of interest as I live at and co-own the property involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian. All right. Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to council, before you is a report for your consideration of approval on a development variance permit for 3 variances. One is for a rear yard setback from 5.0 meters to 1.5 meters. There's a side yard setback variance from 1.5 meters to 0.5 meters, and also to vary the landscaping requirements. This is this building has some history around it in regards to how the subdivision was previously done and some other existing stuff that has made it non-conforming, and then the conversion of the use of the accessory building into an accessory detached residential use. It requires that we do these development variance permit and bring it in compliance with BC Building Code. Some of the items that are mentioned in this report, council will be receiving a report in a future meeting dealing with some of the amendments we are looking at for SHMU after we have met with the development industry. And as we've observed SHMU to date, we have found a few housekeeping things that need to be addressed. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is in the audience should you have any questions of the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Wade. Really appreciate the detailed information, and we will pass it over to Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report. I don't have any concerns around this application, but I did have a question around the rear setback, like in terms of the city's policy. Just given that it's actually a laneway, do we require the same setback for a rear yard, whether there's a laneway or if it's bordering another private property? I'm just thinking of what I've seen in terms of carriage houses in the alleyways of Vancouver, that I believe that some municipalities don't really have significant setback in order to encourage that kind of land infill. And I'm just wondering if you have any comments around that.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCollum, thank you very much for the question. When we did SHMU, we did do a series of research looking at some of the properties in the city of Vancouver, which in some cases are considerably less for rear lane setbacks. We did go with the 1.5 meters, which is in our general regulations and needs to be carried forward into the SHMU zone itself, which is one of the housekeeping requirements we'll be doing. So at moving forward, everything will be at 1.5 meters. Part of that is to deal with some of the building code requirements too. There is some siding as well. And when it comes to something that would be on a corner, then there would be a siding triangle that we would have to address in that condition.
Okay, so when our new policy is implemented, this would essentially fit in with where things are headed.
Through the mayor to council, exactly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor McCollum, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I did see in our staff report that there was the mail out to the surrounding residents, and to my knowledge, we didn't receive any feedback through that, did we?
Through the mayor to Council Moore, no, we have not received any written comments.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And yeah, great to hear that this is really falling in line with really where we want things to go anyway. So we're not really bending anything or doing anything untoward. So really happy to hear that. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. I don't have any questions. This seems like an excellent example of gentle density that we're looking to achieve. And I was just going to move the recommendation.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, and motion passes. All right. Welcome back, Councillor Hillian, and we'll move on to 5.1.2, temporary extension of designated work at 1540 2751 Cliff Avenue. And I'll pass it back over to Ms. Wade.
Thank you. And through the mayor to council, before you is a request from On-Site Construction to carry on works past the designated hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. That are outlined in the Prevention of Public Nuisance Bylaw number 2804. for the location at 1540 2751 Cliff Avenue. The bylaw allows for the applicant to make a request for extension beyond what they call designated hours in the bylaw. And the applicant has done that. The letter is attached to your report. And they are seeking to work from after 10 p.m. up to 7 a.m. The reason why they're asking for this is that it's for the CIBC Bank, which is inside the Driftwood Mall. And they are regulated by federal regulations that they cannot be closed for longer than 15 business days. So in order to do the renovations and the work, they have to work in a very short time period to make this happen. And that also because the work is being done inside the mall, and in your report, there's a map of how far out the residential areas are. So staff feel that this can be well managed. Of course, if we receive any complaints, then we will address that. And so before you is the request to extend the hours so that they can continue working after 10 p.m. and prior to 7 a.m. on Monday to Friday, and on Saturdays so that they can go from, or weekends, from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And yeah, having worked on some bank projects in the past, the hours can get very late in the evenings for them to comply with those kinds of rules. So appreciate you articulating that. Councilor McCollum.
Yeah, I can't foresee any issues with this. There's basically a big parking lot in front of it, and a mall that's closed during these hours. I don't see how this would impact residents, so I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Second. All right. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. And we'll move on to financial service for the audit service plan per year ending December 31st, 2024. And Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, staff report in front of you on page 91 of the agenda gives an overview of our audit and service plan. Relatively straightforward service that we've been utilizing for a number of years. Mr. Langemeyer is here if council has any questions.
I think this is pretty much a housekeeping thing. So if somebody would like to move the motion, unless there's any questions. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Cole Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Morin. And any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Next, we have the grant and aid program, and I will pass it over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. Again, starting on page 108 of the agenda, we have a staff report on the outcome of the 2024 grant and aid program, and we're a great partnership with the Comox Valley Foundation. We have an invited presentation to go over the outcomes, and Mr. Langemeyer is here as well. I think he might have a short introduction to where we're headed.
Mr. Langemeyer.
Wonderful. Nice to be here once again, Mayor and Council. So I'm here to seek direction on the future of the grant and aid program that is currently administered for a one-year trial by the Comox Valley Community Foundation. We distributed Community Foundation distributed $50,000 to 10 different organizations as identified in the report. And the recommendation at the end of all this is to continue with the arrangement with the Community Foundation for another 3-year term. I have assumed the same $50,000 per year amount for grants and aid. And I have Jolene here to give an overview of how the foundation works and the intricacies of their granting process. It is quite fascinating and I like listening to it. So.
All right. So Jolene, if you want to push the magic button on the bottom of your microphone there, Adam can help you if necessary, but there you go. The microphone is on.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and thank you. I was really excited for this invitation. It got me out of the office, which as a newcomer to the Comox Valley Community Foundation, I just feel like there's always things holding me back in the transition. There's always so much to learn from an organization that's been in place for 27 years and a community as vibrant and diverse as the Comox Valley. So to squeeze into a short amount of time, I feel like there are a lot of things I would encourage you to ask questions about if I'm rushing or skipping ahead. But I'm delighted to be here to talk to you today about how the grant in our recent Grant and Aid funding partnership went. It was a rather quick year. I put together a few slides that are really based in a question and answer format to give you a broader view on how granting works. It's what we do all year round. Granting is one portion of our full distribution. Last year, we distributed $1.3 million into the Comox Valley. We're gearing up to be closer to 1.5 million this year. So there's a lot I could really go on, but I won't. So I guess just briefly on the slides, whichever screen you're looking at, I will speak a little bit about how the granting went for Grant and Aid this year, the types of practices we follow, how community-informed granting works. You might be curious who's at the decision table, and there's some interesting snapshots of some of our recent funding outcomes. So
There is a
just-
clicker up there,
Yes.
or Ed can help you drive if there are any
Okay.
challenges up there.
So before I go on to the next slide, I thought I'd just give you a sense of how it went. Overall, very seamless administratively on our side. The Grant and Aid criteria aligned very well with our granting programs. I collaborated on the proposed MOU criteria in your packages as put forward, just to ensure that we're aligning the funding with your desired or preferred outcomes. For the community, the impact was significant in that the Grant and Aid ensured 10 nonprofits also listed in your outcomes package for the full funding they needed in order to deliver on programs and services. Additionally, because it increased our total pool of funding for the year, we were able to say yes to 5 additional very deserving grants that would have otherwise been supported. So if next slide, hit the green button.
The right arrow.
Okay, that's just very intuitive. Okay. So I wanted to share with you a lesser known fact about the Comox Valley Community Foundation. We are one of 207 community foundations working together across Canada toward the same purpose, to strengthen community well-being. And we are members of this national organization called the Community Foundations of Canada. And why this is interesting and important in my view is that as a network member, we engage regionally, nationally, and provincially every year to share resources related to grant making and we mentor each other, and we keep up with trends in granting, giving, and advocacy. In a nutshell, our grant making processes follow national standards. The oldest community foundation is over 100 years old, is Winnipeg Foundation. We're also in the process of helping Cortes Island Community Foundation get their wheels running. So we have a vast network to rely on. We don't have to make this stuff up as we go. As funding partners, community foundations are entrusted to distribute and facilitate local decision-making on behalf of provincial and federal funding. So as a recent example, one-time Provincial Community Prosperity Fund, we granted this summer on their behalf $365,000 toward poverty reduction and social inclusion in the Comox Valley. So how does it work? This community-informed granting is a giant topic, and I could probably spend a lot more time talking about how it all works. But as a funding partner, I'd love for all of you to be confident in the process as it relates to the Grant and Aid funding. We do have 3 models that run annually, 2 community tables, 1 community partnership with the Coalition to End Homelessness, and a community task force. So for today's purpose, I'll focus on the community enrichment grants, which is represented in the workflow of this slide, as it relates to the task force model and Grant and Aid. So that's what I've provided up here on whichever slide you're looking at. So the community enrichment grants open every August, about mid-August, online application for any eligible nonprofit organization that wishes to apply. It opened this year, mid-August. It closes tomorrow. So in terms of what happens behind the scenes with our funding process, When that application closes, we move into a staff review, and this is where due diligence comes in. It might be of interest to council. At this stage, we screen for eligibility. For example, Canada Revenue Agency requires, under our charitable purposes, that a grantee must be a qualified donee as defined under the Income Tax Act. So at this stage, we verify that. Generally, that means that applicants must be a registered charity. So no individuals, no for-profit groups. If anything was in the pool in that regard, we would screen them out. Organizations such as registered societies and others can partner with a registered charity locally based on other qualifying criteria. We also ensure that proposals align with the foundation policy and the purpose of the grant funding. Lastly, applicants provide financial statements and budget proposals for their grant. Sorry, I'm hitting buttons here. Can you make that go away?
Oh, that's just Councillor
Okay, as long as it's not
joining our
me.
meeting. You've done nothing wrong.
So the financial statements and budget proposals, we have our finance manager, the CPA designation, review and rank these, and a risk assessment of low, medium, or higher risk is assigned to each application. This is how we keep financial interpretation out of the task force. So once we've done this thorough eligibility review, we recruit and train a community task force to review and consensus rank each application. So stay with me here because this is a very administrative. So essentially that means that community members, and I will talk about who these individuals are in the next slide a little bit more specifically, they read 40 to 60 applications individually, and using a standardized evaluation matrix so that each reviewer is measuring on the same parameters. They rank those individually, and then we convene as a group. Staff do not participate in the review. We did the due diligence at the start. We're there to support and facilitate the group and toward a consensus ranking. So they all have to agree that this application is measured based on the matrix in this way, and a number is assigned. So at the end of this process, that community group has agreed and are confident that an ordered list of this one gets money first, this one gets money second, has been established. It doesn't end there exactly. Now we take a look at the composition of that list. Are the top 5 only serving seniors? What are all the populations represented in the ranking? Is there any cause for making adjustments to geography? Maybe there is nothing represented for the rural communities in this ranking. So we take a little bit of a broader view look at that list. And if the task force recommends that there's no reason to adjust, then it stays as is. If they want to move something, that's at their discretion. And again, that's not guided by the staff at the table. But we have the next job, which moves into the next area, which is the funding and reporting. So we receive that list, and from there, I apply specific purpose funding or partner funding like grant and aid, and we match that criteria to the funding restrictions. And then from there, we flow the open funding to the bottom to completion. And inevitably, we see the line drawn as to who's not going to be funded. So I think in terms of the process here, it continues to be quite administrative in that when we notify applicants mid-November, they hear the good news. They sign agreements with us that the funding will be used for the year, that there are conditions of granting, and that there are reporting requirements. So that agreement is held on file. If any applicant were in default, it would preclude them from applying for future funding. So we have a full-time equivalent staff member that administers all of the paperwork and reporting related to this. Unsuccessful applicants, however, we in a new process keep the dream alive, and we hold their applications as open and active until December 31st. with a call to the giving season. If any additional funding comes in, we just drop it into the bottom line as advised by that task force. So last year we were able to receive an additional $50,000 in December and flow it directly into the bottom line for those organizations. So should there be additional funding available in any given year, you can check in with us mid-November to December, and we can help you with that problem. So here I did include a highlight, which is the little icon of our application guide. It is online, and for anyone who just wants to know so much more about this, you can read that application guide. It has the full detail of our eligibility. It's readily available on our website. It tells you what are the questions, what is the reviewer matrix. So this is most interesting, in my opinion, is that if you want to know what that task force is basing their decisions on, it's in the guide. So each applicant can not only see what they're going to be evaluated on, but they can see which question it's related to and what they're looking for. I don't know, next slide. There it is. Okay. So who is at the table? So the Community Foundation in its vast history was a working board at one time. At this time, we use a grant review task force and operational staff for all granting matters. We are looking generally for specific attributes in our task force. We don't do an open call at this time because we have such great success with a targeted outreach in looking for 6 participants and no more than 8 at the table. You must be a Comox Valley community member. We're looking for nonprofit experience because this is who the funding will serve. We look for representation related to the funding, which is key. For example, one of our priorities this year is mental health and connection. So we were seeking a social worker with a nonprofit background. So it's really about a task force design more than a recruitment exercise. Every year we make sure that somebody has working knowledge of the arts so that there is understanding and representation alongside all of the other important priorities. We look for diversity of ages, backgrounds, and experience. And we also are looking each year for somebody who hasn't participated before because we don't want the same 6 people every year. And you cannot be an applicant due to conflict of interest, and you cannot be staff. So a lot of thought goes into who sits there, and I'm glad to have your questions at the end about any of this. There's also a very thorough reviewer training so that everybody is making decisions based on the same framework for granting. In terms of our board focuses on governance, policy, and strategy, and granting is delegated to operations. They oversee that we are functioning in compliance. That said, we believe that the shared experience, or like I like to call it the burden of granting, cultivates informed advocates at our leadership table. And as such, I request in the first 3 years of service on the board that directors volunteer as one-time community member reviewers with the same expectations and training as the task force and with no specific authority within the group. This experience is very humbling to have a voice at the table, not only on who is being funded, but on what is being left behind. And it creates a united purpose behind our mission. So in terms of being left behind, I thought it might be interesting to share the full picture of the community enrichment grants last year, which Grant and Aid supported. So last year's program at the start, we had 51 applications asking for a total of $629,000. The chart that you have in front of you shows that the green section represents the amount funded. So we had $323,000 of funding. That's 31 applications. The Grant and Aid is part of this total. The 2 blue sections were unfunded. So the darker section represents 9 unfunded applications within the city of Courtenay that were left behind, totaling $114,000. And the second lighter blue section is 11 unfunded applications within the other areas of the regional district, totaling $251,000. So as a scenario, you can see that we were able to fund a good portion, but that there's still a large portion of ask remaining, and that a piece of that pie fits within the criteria of grant and aid. The second chart, and this is my last slide for you, most recently are the results of the Summers Provincial Community Prosperity Fund, which received 40 Comox Valley applications totaling just over $3.7 million toward local initiatives related to poverty reduction and social inclusion. So again, the green section represents 8 funded applications at $365,000 total available. And then the 2 blue sections represent the unfunded applications. I did manage to flip the blues in this chart. So this time the light blue represent 18 unfunded applications within the city of Courtenay at about 1.7 million in need. And the darker section is 14 other Comox Valley applicants at approximately 1.6 million. So essentially the blue sections offer a significant opportunity for partner funding, like grant and aid, to make a difference. Our efforts at the Community Foundation in the coming years will focus on increasing support through granting and reducing this shortfall. Now, everybody else was watching the clock. I don't know how long that was and if there's time for questions, but that's all I prepared for you. I'm happy to bring other information forward, but I did want to just thank the council for this invitation to join you and be part of the discussion.
Excellent, thanks. And definitely beyond a 10-minute presentation, but I think given the fact that this is our first one, and we're getting a little bit of that history and how things work, getting that mechanics is really good. My only, well, I have many comments. I love the foundation. I've been able to take advantage of it as nonprofits, but also direct lots of people towards it. And you guys have been amazing working with people to success. So really appreciate that. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks very much for joining us today, and appreciate your work. Community Foundation is part of the legacy of Stan Hagen, our former MLA, who started this, and I've been very pleased with its evolution in recent years, the focus of the funding. I just wondered, is your primary source of revenue still bequests that come to you? And I realize you build an investment fund and you're basically giving away the interest and such, but is that the main source of income?
I'm going to say yes, at $16 million in assets held for stewardship into the community. We are also seeing a large amount of funding coming in through our provincial and federal granting and other funding partners. So I've noticed an increase in that regard, but endowment funding, and now since 2022, we do accept flow-through funding. So for gifts like this that can provide immediate short-term support, as opposed to every dollar being invested for the long term. It's part of a diversification for philanthropic giving.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
I have one small technical thing, and I always blame it on the computer, just so you know, but I do find the legends really hard to see just on this here, which I think you realize as well. So, but other than that, really love the clarity of it. And again, being able to articulate what the need is in our community. I mean, there's lots of great stuff going on, but the need is still quite outstrips our capacity right now. I think that's the clarification question. So if somebody would like to. Thank you. All right, moved by Councillor Cole-Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hillian. And any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thanks very much for your presentation today. It's much appreciated, and we will move on to our fire department. And 5.3.1, and Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Council, beginning on page 138 of the agenda, we have a request for support from Council. our fire department. We hear a lot about the great work that they're doing. We've identified the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund as a good source of revenue to help replace some important communication equipment. We have that recommendation that is on the screen in front of council, that you authorize an application under this fund. Chief McDonald's here for any questions if council has them.
All right, thanks for that. And Councillor McCollum.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? I think it's pretty much a housekeeping thing. Really want to thank the fire chief for bringing this forward. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? And motion carries. Moving on to rec and culture, we have the strategic cultural plan update with the draft report, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. Ms. Chan is going to do an introduction for this important project, and we have invited presentation from Nordic City, who has been the consulting group assisting us with this.
Thank you, through the mayor to council. The purpose of the staff report tonight is to present the draft strategic cultural plan. This plan highlights the importance of arts, culture, and heritage services in the city of Courtenay. It'll support investment in arts and culture as an economic, tourism, and social impact driver. It provides a vision for the next 10 years and a plan for achieving the goals and objectives outlined in this report. So we have Nordic City joining us tonight via Zoom to present the draft. We have our Barbara Adad-Blenya and Peter Lyman presenting, and I will turn it over to them right now.
Hello, let me just share my screen.
All right, it's come up.
Okay. You can see my screen, yeah.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wells, members of council, staff and guests. My name is Barbara Adad-Blenya. I am a senior analyst from Nordic City, and I am joining you today from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, where I am privileged to live and work. Also joined today by our senior partner, Peter, as introduced by Joy. We have been working with the city of Courtenay on a 10-year strategic cultural plan, and today we are excited to share our final report. We will be happy to take your questions at the end of the presentation. First, I will give you a recap of the background activities and research that we conducted, and then we will dive into the strategic cultural plan. So to start, what do we mean by arts and culture? This plan defines arts and culture very broadly, and we included cultural resources such as heritage, public arts, visual arts, cultural spaces and facilities, among other things. So this slide just shows you the broad range of resources that we included in our definition for arts and culture. For our approach, we leveraged a 5-phased approach for the strategic planning process, and this included research, community engagement, drafting recommendations, and also community check-in. For our community engagements, we conducted a variety of activities, including a public survey, one-on-one interviews, a sector focus group, public drop-in events. We also held 4 group conversations with equity priority groups that were led by our team and local arts organizations. We also facilitated a community check-in to validate what we had heard from the community. We then proceeded by identifying some priority needs from that engagement process. And some of these priorities have included the need for engaging Comoros First Nations, the need for more cultural spaces, the need for a public arts policy, and also further development of cultural tourism in Courtenay. As part of our research, we also conducted an economic and social impact analysis of the arts and cultural sector in Courtenay. And for the economic analysis, we looked at labor income and full-time employment. We found that cultural organizations in Courtenay directly generated 3.6 million in labor income, contributing 4 million Canadian dollars to Courtenay's 2022 GDP. Of course, there is also indirect and induced impacts in other sectors of the economy, including spillover effects for local businesses. Socially, we found that art and culture encourages social participation and also makes Courtenay an attractive place to live. Our research also did a benchmarking analysis to see what other comparable municipalities are doing in terms of cultural service delivery. A key observation here is that different approaches and practices are being used, including having dedicated art and cultural staff, having there's diverse budgets, and also strategic plans to guide the service delivery. What we noted in the case of Courtenay is that there is no art and culture grants that community members or groups can apply for. And so this benchmarking sort of provides a broad overview or reveals best practices that can inform decision-making intended towards investments in the sector. We also conducted a cultural facility options analysis, which identified various art and cultural space needs that we heard from the community, and then developed a working document outlining short, medium, and longer term priorities for considerations in terms of addressing those cultural space needs. Here, the next step is for the city to conduct a needs assessment for city-owned facilities to further understand how existing space needs can be met. Now we will dive into the strategic cultural plan. This slide shows you what our strategic planning framework looks like. We started by developing a vision for arts and culture in Courtenay, drawing from what we heard from the community, and then comes the foundational elements, which I'll talk about briefly, and then the strategic goals with their objectives, and each of those objectives have their actions, and an implementation roadmap will follow this process. For the vision, the key aspects include Courtenay as a cultural hub for creative opportunities, inclusive arts and culture, and interweaving the culture and history of Indigenous people into this diverse community. We also identified 5 foundational elements, which are the core priority areas or actions that the city must take to transform and grow the arts and cultural sector. And these include advancing reconciliation across all initiatives, building the team to drive cultural change, transforming and expanding cultural spaces, elevating investment in art and culture, and finally leading original cultural advocacy efforts to get the support that is needed to grow arts and culture in Courtenay and the Comoros Valley. These foundational elements are, of course, informed by our 5 strategic goals. And now I will give you a quick example of those goals and their objectives. For our goal 1, which is to advance truth and reconciliation through arts and culture, a key objective here is to recognize the role and rights of Comoros First Nations and other Indigenous peoples as it relates to arts and culture. These changes are required to ensure that the strategic cultural plan aligns with the distinction-based approach adopted by the province of BC. For our second goal, it aims to build community resilience through arts and culture by leveraging art and culture as a medium to engage the community on complex social challenges. Our third goal is to develop more accessible and affordable cultural spaces by prioritizing initiatives or upgrades that provide enhanced and additional space for arts and culture. Our goal 4 aims to bolster community arts by supporting the capacity building of community-led arts and cultural organizations. And for our goal 5, we aim to support the strategic development of the cultural sector by embedding culture more firmly in tourism initiatives in Courtenay and the Kumos Valley. So we have done our job by listening to the community, drafting the plan, checking in, and today presenting this final report to council. For the next steps, the city, led by Joy and Susie, will put out the drafts for community review and then come back to council with a revised version. That process will then be followed by the completion of an implementation plan. Thank you for listening, and I will now hand over to Joy for final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara and Peter. And so to expand upon the next steps in this project, we are recommending that the draft plan be posted along with the draft report summary for public feedback. It also will be included as a short survey to confirm the vision, goals, and objectives outlined in the document. The input received through this process will be considered as we work towards the final plan. In regards to Indigenous engagement, staff recognize that the project timelines and milestones are colonistic references and constraints. As a result, we've adapted engagement approaches to support more flexible, relationship-oriented engagement with Indigenous peoples and groups in the community. So in addition to the public engagement that we will be entering into, staff have actively reached out via invitations to KFN, the Métis Association, and urban Indigenous serving organizations, requesting meetings with their respective members to share the plan and to receive feedback. And so we have started to meet with these organizations. Before posting the document publicly, there will be some edits to reflect feedback we received, specifically to how the report needs to respectfully and consistently reference the identities of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and urban Indigenous community members. The city is committed towards ongoing relationship building with the Comox First Nation, the Métis, Inuit, and urban Indigenous communities to allow for a continuous shaping of the strategic cultural plan. It's a living document that goes beyond the finalization of this document. So with the additional engagement, in this final phase, staff will be returning on a future date with the final report for council's consideration. This will include high-level implementation plan and financial implications. Detailed implementation plans and financial impacts will follow council's adoption of the final report at a future date. Thank you, and I'll open the floor to questions now.
Excellent. Thanks very much for the detailed report tonight. Really appreciate it. And I'll look to council if there's any questions or comments. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor, and hi, everyone. Thanks for the report. Really nice to see the draft report and to staff for highlighting the important consideration around a strategy and the development of a strategy and the implications that has on our efforts to be more culturally safe in our work and the development of our work. And so I just wanted to really highlight and appreciate that we are being really mindful around ways to address reconciliation through our approaches of engaging Indigenous partners and rights holders in the community. So I just wanted to kind of share that comment. I do have 2 questions of clarification. One, which I had highlighted to staff previously, and it's located in the staff report, and our consultant colleagues have shared the community check-in that occurred in November 2023. That occurred probably during the most popular local art and cultural festival. By local, I mean produced locally, and the artists who were participating were all local artists. And the feedback we received at that time was that it was unfortunate that that event took place at the same time as an event where most of our working artists and producers were otherwise occupied. And so I'm wondering if staff can speak to ways in which we think that we can either engage, or if we can speak to ways in which those who were unable to attend that community check-in in November 23 were engaged with afterwards. That's my first clarification question.
Thank you to the mayor, to Councillor Shirley Kerr. So when that event was scheduled and we announced and advertised the event, the organizer reached out, when the organizers reached out to us and let us know about the conflict. And I communicated with the organizer and let them know that it was unfortunate, but there was the survey that was available, which would provide the same information alongside with a copy of the presentation. So we encourage the organizer to share the survey with the arts, the attendees of that and the artists of that festival. And secondly, what we can do is with this next level of engagement is we can also reach out to the same group to make sure that we can confirm that there is engagement back from those who attended and missed out on the check-in event.
Thanks. I do have a second question of clarification, Mayor, but I don't know if there's others in the room. So
There's no other lights on right now, so
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in the last for next steps, the staff report speaks to an implementation plan and financial implications of addressing some of the objectives under each of the goals. And I appreciate that in the draft plan, it does speak to the comparative analysis of other communities. And I guess I'm kind of just curious, and this might be more for our consultant colleagues. You know, we're of course a growing community, but we're also a community that has shared services and shared identities in the Comox Valley more broadly. And a lot of the goals and the objectives under the goals speak to the role of Courtenay, and it is a Courtenay strategic cultural plan. And I looked to some of the comparators that were in the report. Now, those centers are often larger population sizes or close-ish. And some of the recommendations spoke to increasing staff capacity internally and or partnering to increase capacity through external partners. And so I'm wondering if you can maybe just highlight that section. You know, the city is going to be engaged in a prioritization exercise soon around our strategic priorities. And I guess I do have some concerns around some of the costs that might be associated with this advancement of this plan. So I'm wondering if we can either hear from staff or the consultants around what we can see with other communities across the province.
I can jump in here, and then Susie, you can chip in. And so one of the key things that, of course, we identified in this process that, as you rightly said, the plan is a Courtenay plan, but we identified the role that the services that Courtenay provides plays for the Comox Valley. And so one of the key foundational elements is that cultural advocacy role for Courtenay to lead that process in advocating for a regional effort in addressing some of these recommendations or actions that are coming out of this process. And so that is one of the core foundational elements that, even though it's a Courtenay strategic cultural plan, we did highlight that Courtenay has a role to play here in doing that cultural advocacy, leading that process in getting neighbors and the region to kind of support in implementing some of these actions.
You would like me to
Peter, you can chip in.
An element in the benchmarking. We found, as Barbara has said, that the differences was quite stark in the fact that most of the communities had their own way of expressing what their programs were, how much they were paying for them, spending on them, and so on. Like, there was quite a diversity in that sense. And so, I mean, it's good to have the comparison and benchmarking, but you're not really trying to rate yourselves against any specific community or them, across the board in some way. It's really a kind of an indication that other communities are doing this, are approaching culture in different ways. And I think the fact that you see that maybe there may be slightly larger communities, and so they would have more resources allocated towards the cultural activities. And it isn't a direct line that we said, well, because they are, you should be doing that. It really comes much more from an evaluation and examination of the entire range of feedback we got from the community about the needs and the possibilities and the emphasis of the opportunities. And I really think it's more an extension of that than keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. And I would also say that that Joy and Susie were very good at making sure that we were trying to find the path of least cost and most efficient use of existing facilities and so on. So I don't think we stand by what we observe. Of course, we don't have to implement it, and it's up to the council to make those decisions.
Ms. Saunders, did you want to add?
Sure. Thank you through the mayor to council. Just to add on, I think Peter and Barbara have summed it up. In the selection of the municipalities that we chose for benchmarking, we did, there's a number of things we took into consideration in collaboration with Nordicity. One, of course, was size. So it ranges from the city of Nelson at 11,000 to Campbell River at 35,000. So we're not looking at municipalities that are substantially larger than the city of Courtenay. And also looking at cities both who are very focused on arts and culture, such as Nelson and Squamish, and are known for that, compared to other cities such as Campbell River, who clearly invest heavily in arts and culture, but don't have the same kind of reputation as, say, a city of Nelson is. We tried to take a balanced approach about looking at both cities that are clearly focused on arts and culture and what does their investment look like, and then also comparators from a size. And Langley was chosen both because of its arts and culture perspective, but also because it sits within other municipalities, similar to Courtenay. So just wanted to provide a bit of that context. But I think what Peter and Barbara said about these are analysis that shows us the multitude of ways that things can be achieved and done. We have municipalities who provide significant funding to an arts council to do most of the work on their behalf, although they still have arts and cultural staff. And we have others who do it completely in-house, including staffing their museums and so on and so forth. So it provides a range of the way the work can be done. But at the end of the day, the recommendations in the report are not based on what others are doing. It's what we're hearing from the community, the arts and culture sector, and what our vision and goals are and what it would take to achieve those. So at the end of the day, it'll obviously be up to council to decide if those are the right goals and then how we want to go about achieving them. And the implementation plan will start to articulate the different ways we can do that.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for all the work that's going on in this regard. I know Deb Renz is here in the gallery, and I'm reminded the last time she was here, I forgot to thank her for what she does on a day-to-day basis to bring arts and culture alive in our community. My question is along those lines. We've focused on our existing resources, on making sure that we're supporting the SID, the art gallery, the museum. There is reference in the reports and the feedback that came in from people that rather than just provide facilities, we should be providing additional funding for other operational matters. And there's also reference to the need for a performing arts center. We've never actually had somebody come to this council in my tenure anyway and advocate for that. Although I hear all sorts of rumors that there's discussion going on. Is there anybody out there who's actually squirreling away money, raising funds, organizing to have us, build something like that? Or are we convinced that we can continue to support the SID, perhaps expand it? Or where do we stand with that? And will this process point us in a particular direction?
Ms. Saunders.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian, through the Mayor to Council. I'm not aware that anyone is yet raising money for it, although I think it wouldn't take much to start that process. But we do know, and actually Deb is the one who provided some history on work that was done, I believe, in the 90s around some business case analysis for Centre for the Arts. And at that time, it wasn't feasible. The report does identify that although that is quite a visionary goal for many in the community, we may not be of a size, and that means for the Comox Valley, not just Courtenay, to financially support it or for it to be self-sustaining. It would require substantial operating funding. It would require a community effort. And where it would be located, the piece of property that would be required, and how that fits within the kind of economic and social development goals we'd have for an arts center. That's why it's listed in the strategic plan as a visionary element. And it's alongside another visionary element, which is very consistent with our OCP around the downtown as a cultural hub and precinct. And so part of the work that's recommended is to really look at those two pieces to look at, instead of potentially a single center for the arts, how does the downtown function and act as a center for the arts in a more sort of geographical district? And I think the other thing I'd say, I was just remembering what the first part of your question was, but again, there's quite a vision for it, but we're trying to work on what's sort of the most reasonable, and we've also set it as a visionary goal, and the recommendations are related to business case analysis, et cetera. The other thing you said, sorry, Councillor Hillian, is that there is clear feedback from the community that there is a need and desire for community arts funding. The city does not provide community-based arts funding beyond the grant and aid program that is done through the Community Foundation that we heard earlier. And that is something that is we found consistent among other municipalities, is that there's typically community-based arts funding. And whether that's something the city takes on or the region, again, would come through the implementation of the strategic plan, but there's a clear desire for that particular type of funding that the city currently doesn't offer, and nor does the regional district, other than through the electoral areas.
Thanks. And I think, having lived in a whack of different places throughout the province, sometimes it's industry that builds some of these community centers, which again, I think the Comox Valley missed that boat for whatever reason. So Councillor Gilliker.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just as a follow-up to that, it reminded me when I was reading the report, I was surprised that the conclusion was that we don't do grants for art and culture. And I guess my interpretation of that is that we don't do that directly, but I'm wondering if we can clarify through our support to, for example, the Comox Valley Arts Council, there is grants to artists in the community through their micro grant program. So is it okay to presume that in an indirect way, through our funding, our large amount of funding to the Arts Council, that we are in fact supporting artists directly through that relationship as our key partner?
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councillor Gilliker. The funding that we provide the Arts Council is restricted to the deliverables outlined in their fee-for-service agreement, and the micro grant program is not articulated in that agreement. So I don't think we could say that we are directly contributing to that. We generally fund their core operations to deliver on the items as outlined in their fee-for-service agreement. Could that change in a future agreement? Of course. We provide, I think it's about, I think Jenny said $57,000 a year. But our fee-for-service agreement outlines what our funding is directed towards, and it doesn't include micro grants.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Any further questions? Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's appropriate to move the recommendation.
I think so.
Yeah, I will do so.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Sorry, Mayor, I have a question. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Jolicoeur.
On the second, be it resolved statement here, in the so we're approving the next steps that are elaborated in the staff report, starting on page 5. And I guess I just want to draw our attention to the third paragraph, which is one sentence long. And I want to just clarify that in fact, this component of a final report that includes a high-level implementation plan and financial implications, was that part of the work plan for our staff? And is there any financial budgetary impacts of that component of the next steps?
Ms. Sanders.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. That's part of the project plan. And so there's no further financial impacts.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And motion carries. And we'll move on to our cart exchange portal launch. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garvin.
Thank you through the mayor to council. Mr. Shaw is here. He's just going to give a little overview of a much anticipated project that many members of the community have been asking about.
Thank you. Through the city or through the mayor to sorry, excuse me. Through the mayor to members of council. Thank you. A quick briefing note here, just update council and the broader public about the cart exchange program to for the solid waste service. The communication really details our communication strategy, the implications and the cart exchange options that exist for the broader community. It's articulated within this briefing note that specifically the multifamily are being addressed individually as a group to optimize the exchange rates. So we've been in contact with those members directly through letter with staff. And there is an online cart exchange portal for members of the public to request carts and cart size exchanges for their residential use, as well as contacting the operations center, and staff can help them through those processes. The portal is expected to be open until November 1st. We anticipate between 1,000 to 2,000 exchanges total. One exchange request is representative of all carts that anyone may own or anyone may have use at their particular property. So a request is inclusive of any cart that they may choose to exchange. And the cart exchange for the 2024 program is free of charge as a result of the inability for us to offer a cart option or selection size option at the onset of the program. And so that was built into the 2024 financial plan. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
So thanks for that. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, for residents who would like to pay for curbside pickup over and above what's being offered, is it going to be done through the cart exchange or is that going to be a different system? Say if they want a second garbage can, they have, you know, twins and diapers or something like that.
Fair question. Thank you, Councilor McCollum. The short answer is not in particular with respect to this exchange program. The program is intended to exchange existing organic and or recycling carts. If additional services are required, we would recommend that those individuals contact the operations department specifically for those additional requests, and those can be accommodated as well continuously throughout the year. There is a subsidy for those that are in need. So those particular wastes that are exhaustive in terms of residential need for those individuals that have younger families or those that have individuals in need of health waste, it is a reduced fee.
All right. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. My apologies if I missed this. Can you characterize the most prevalent requests that we're getting? I'm wondering, for example, I've spoken to a number of seniors who do have challenges with manipulating the large carts, and I'm guessing that for the most part, what we're getting are requests for smaller, perhaps for organics and perhaps for recycling. Would that be the general characterization what's going on?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Hilly, and you're absolutely correct. The number one request is for a reduction in size of specifically the recycling carts, as well as organic, follow suit, not too shortly thereafter. But the requests thus far have been quite limited, so it's really great to get this information out to the public to know that the service is available. I think to date, since the program launched on September 16th, we've only received 137 requests for cart exchange.
And where do we stand right now with the number of people who are actually getting assistance with manipulating their carts out to the curb?
Yeah, that's also a great question. It's right around what we anticipated from a financial perspective. We're right around 50, just over 50, under 60.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much.
Appreciate that. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. For those who don't qualify for subsidized extra garbage, can you tell us approximately what the cost is, the full recovery cost of, say, they want a bigger garbage can or a second garbage can? Roughly speaking, per year sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Councillor Frisch. You put me on the spot asking for specific numbers. It's a full cost recovery with respect to the garbage collection apportionment only. I hesitate to say the number out loud for the sake of being incorrect, but I believe it's right around $130.
We also have Mr. Langemeyer here.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to know like the dollars and cents of it. Just, it's not $20, it's not $500. It's around 130.
Yeah. Yeah, it's with respect to the fixed charge for the collection of the waste and then apportionments relative to the total waste of volumes that would be collected and then landfilled. So it's a cumulative cost of that.
That sounds fair. Thanks.
Thanks for Councillor Frisch for the question and for the answers. Appreciate it. Sure. Any further questions or comments before I call a question? It's just receiving. Yeah, just for receipt. So I was just going to receive. Okay, it's been moved in second. Thank you, Councillor McCollum. And I wasn't going to take a real vote. So we're on to reports. So start with Councillor Cole Hamilton. Oh,
one more.
Oh, it's the 6.2. I'm too quick. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the Mayor and Council, we have very regularized engagement with the DCBIA. It's one of the most active groups and they receive a great deal of attention because of our great downtown. We invest considerably in downtown and we have a briefing note starting on page 349 of the agenda. In response to requests for some additional service downtown, we provided that briefing note so Council's aware of these costs. And so the briefing note provides an overview of what we have for waste collection downtown, the waste receptacles, and then the cost related to additional two garbage facilities downtown. And I think they're going to be well cited and I believe well utilized. Mr. Shaw's here if council has any other questions on that. But we want to be clear on the operational response and budget implications.
Thanks so much. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks to staff for this report. I think it's really useful for council to see what the financial implications are for this kind of service. I think if you were to ask someone in the public if they thought it cost $5,000 a year to empty a garbage can, they would be surprised by that. So I think it's good information for us to understand this. But I had a couple questions because it doesn't really provide a lot of background on the dialogue and how this request came to be. And is the need for these extra receptacles because our staff have also noticed that there's not enough space in the cans that we have downtown, or is it that we don't have enough distribution of? I wasn't clear what the issue is that we're addressing with the two cans.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councillor McCollum, this is a direct response to a request from the BIA in that the locations of the existing receptacles weren't adequate. So staff feel, based on what we can do downtown, that the existing locations are sufficient. However, in a drive-by, walk around with the mayor, we could see that there were location opportunities potentially And these are mid-block garbage receptacles. They have to be very carefully sited so as to be safe for small people who run around downtown, those be small children, et cetera. But at this point, it's directly as a result of a specific request by the BIA for this. And we think that in order to have kind of there are some visual implications of people choosing to leave their garbage instead of walking a half a block to existing receptacles. And we think that in terms of this specific input by this important area downtown, we can accommodate that. But the existing service level that we have is being augmented based on that request. And we just want council to be aware of those costs.
Okay, that's helpful. So it is more about distribution than capacity, which is good to know. And I guess my other question would be then, is it also, is the siting near where we also have seating? I know.
Correct, yeah. And so that, I think that was the challenge, is that mid-block, there are those benches, and so people would sit, they would consume their things, and then they would not have a receptacle right there, and then feel that
Leave it
there should be, so they would just leave it there, and that was causing the request from the downtown businesses. And prior to that, we communicated with the downtown BIA and their members that, you know, if a receptacle is overflowing or is full, that they can call and have that picked up more frequently. And so this was very specifically, it had nothing to do with anything overflowing. People are just unfortunately leaving their garbage in a wrong location.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it is nice to have garbage receptacles where we have people hanging out on benches. So yeah, that I'm in support of this. And again, thanks for the report and the additional information for council.
Fantastic. Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Might seem like an odd question, but is there sort of an industry standard in terms of how many, what the guidelines are for garbage cans if you compare to other communities? And I'm also thinking, you know, we have garbage cans all over in our parks and other public spaces, and you know, I guess I'm just wondering if there's if there's any issue, like, is everybody going to contact us now and say, well, I actually see lots of garbage, you know, down by the mall or in the whatever business district we have? And I guess I'm just curious whether there's sort of a guideline around that.
It's a great question. Thank you. Councillor Moore, if I may just quickly, our CFO was kind enough to tell me what the actual cost of garbage was, and it's $138.20 for an additional garbage can at a full cost recovery rate. So that's for the record, so I don't have to guess, but I was close. So props, points for me, I guess. In terms of industry standard, I would suggest the straight answer to that would be no, there isn't necessarily an industry standard. There's best practices. There's also community need. There's historic service levels that have been established and assumed by the community. And that's inclusive of the BIA and our community as a whole. We have garbage cans across our linear parks and open spaces across the city. They vary depending upon the type and usage of those spaces, being neighborhood parks or community parks. But also based on need, and historically as well, they've kind of landed in terms of where those garbage cans are located, where relative to what you've just described is where people would normally congregate or use those park spaces, or to that end. With respect to the downtown and specifically operational staff, back in 2018, 2019, met at the BIA and had a walk around in the downtown core to talk about the equitable distribution of those assets. And at that time, it was requested of staff that the redistribution of the existing assets, there was a heavy focus on all assets on 5th Street, whereby the BIA expands beyond just 5th to include 4th and 6th and areas beyond that. And so there was a valiant effort on terms of operations as they renewed those cans to what they are today, to be the branded BIA cans, that they were equitably distributed as best possible without increasing service levels at that time. And so that's where some of the historics were about benches being where they are, but the cans themselves being redistributed to more equitably provide service across the area. As you can see within the briefing note, services do do ebb and flow with respect to season. Obviously, summer seasons and seasonalities would increase the usage, and so we've increased the services to support the cleanliness of the downtown core and servicing those cans to ensure that they're used in the most optimal way. This again, quite simply, is just an addition of 2 cans within the downtown core to support those mid-block benches. There were historically cans there, as Mr. Garbutt articulated, they weren't necessarily placed in the best location historically, just given sight lines and visibility for small or children using the mid-block crossing. So staff are going to work diligently to find a siting location for those particular cans. I'd really like to articulate, and I appreciate the commentary that Councillor McCollum had with respect to this briefing note. It's really a service level briefing note. It speaks to the service level holistically as to what it is provided in terms of garbage and garbage services globally across the community, what it costs to provide that service and how that service is managed both from an operational perspective, but also from a cost recovery perspective relative to the service as a whole. So we hope to bring more of these forward as we go, and it's a very transparent way of articulating the service and the cost for service delivery, and those can go up and down then depending on council as well.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's like when I was first elected and found out how much a little bit of paving cost and went home and told my son, and people complain about rough roads or whatever. It costs a lot of money, and even garbage cans cost a lot of money. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moran. And I think, one of the things that, it's almost a victim of success as well. The more downtown coffee shops and things that are being utilized, that's, kind of one of the reasons where this particular trash was coming from. So kind of a good thing, but at the same time, the impacts on the area was obviously something that we want to make sure the downtown looks great. So Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I just quickly wanted to show my support for the program. I think having, garbage in the downtown is really important. Garbage pickup for that matter in the downtown is really important. And keeping it clean is also really important. And when I look at the number, $45,000 to $50,000 a year, I think you'd be hard pressed to get a private contractor to go around that many times a week and pick up all the garbage and make sure it's all clean and taken care of. So I think we're getting relatively great value, and I'm happy to see it increased if that's what need is. Thanks.
All right. All right. And it is just for information, so I'll just receive it on behalf of council unanimously, and we can move on to council reports. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Just speak briefly. While many of my colleagues were fortunate to be in Vancouver for the Union of BC Municipalities meetings, and I really appreciate the representation they gave due to a scheduling challenge. I was in Ottawa for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities sort of fall board meetings, and just wanted to say it was a pleasure, particularly the executive meetings, which were a couple of days, and there are only 2 of us from British Columbia, to be able to bring a Courtenay and Comox Valley perspective to strategic planning, and particularly to our sort of shaping our advocacy work that's going to be coming up in a couple of months. So I just appreciate knowing that there was such a strong representation for the city back in Vancouver, and missed seeing you all there, but get plenty of FaceTime with you folks, so we're good.
Thanks so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for representing us. It is truly appreciated, and Jonathan did a fantastic job as vice chair, so really appreciate his preparedness. So that was great. Councillor Frisch. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just acknowledge that I did have the opportunity to attend the Union of BC Municipalities Conference, and among the meetings that we did have with provincial government officials, I wanted to highlight that we did meet with the Ministry of Transportation to once again emphasize the need for improvements to the intersection at 17th Street Bridge. It's a project that we've been advocating for quite some time. There was some acknowledgement that they're behind, and I think there was some optimism that they might eventually be getting to it. So, but I just wanted our citizens to know that we did in fact push for that initiative, along with numerous other municipal needs. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Yeah, I think I was a bit cheeky and referred to it as Groundhog Day, that every time we meet with them, we seem to be asking for that. So appreciate that. Councillor Gilles.
Yeah, Mayor. Maybe I'll let others speak to our meeting with the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction, but I did want to just share some kind of insights and celebrations from UBCM last week. In preparation for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation next week, I thought it would be good for us to share that Councillor McCollum and I were able to attend the community to community forum between local leaders from local municipal governments and First Nations across the province, where we got to hear about some really exciting opportunities for collaboration around governance, around land, around collaborative projects across the province. And I think really wanting to just, lift up my hands to each of my colleagues for prioritizing reconciliation, because we also heard that it hasn't yet made it to be a priority for each local government. So I think we're well on our way. And on that, I wanted to share back with the community that our City of Courtenay resolution on requesting the support of UBCM to advocate to the province for a unique funding stream to advance DRIPA, the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, and reconciliation local activities with our Indigenous partners locally, passed as part of the endorsed block at UBCM. And so, again, something to celebrate and hopefully see some action towards being able to support and have the resources to be able to support local action towards reconciliation. Thanks.
Thanks so much for that. And one thing, just kudos to all counselors who were going to meetings and then being pulled out from other sessions and stuff. And that's one of the things that can be quite challenging as we go through the week. But I think everybody did a fantastic job. Councillor McCollum? Councillor Morin?
Yeah, just quickly, many of us were at UBCM and as mentioned, had a lot of meetings, and I know that sometimes we're asked, well, do these resolutions do anything? Wanted to just reiterate that what Councillor Jolicoeur said, that the resolution he mentioned, I think we had probably at least 7 or 8 resolutions that came from the Comox Valley. Well, probably even more than that. I think Courtenay had at least 5. Anyway, they all passed. And sometimes we think, oh, what difference does it make taking these resolutions forward? But I did have a chat with someone about that on the UBCM board, and we do get a report from UBCM on the progress of those with the province. So I think it might be helpful for us to report on that. Report out on that throughout the year. Of course, we have an election coming, so we didn't really get any strong commitments in those meetings, but I think it would be useful for for the public to know where these resolutions go and if any action comes out of them, and what action happens. I think that's about it for me. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And maybe as Councillor Jolicoeur alluded to, we did have meetings with Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, along with Ministry of Health. And we had representatives from Island Health also attend that meeting. And again, we strongly advocated for more complex care beds, something that we've been advocating for since this government took office, frankly, quite a few years ago, and looking for, some of these new beds to be actually located in our community and closer for those that need the treatment closer to home. And so I think that covers most of the UBCM stuff that happened. A couple other things. We did have the King Charles II Coronation Medals that went to Ron Weber and Bruce Curtis, 2 outstanding community members. And so I was able to attend that ceremony. And again, just honoring the work that these individuals have done in our community. I did have to leave UBCM early on Friday morning to attend the Coalition and Homelessness strategic planning session. And again, just so happy to see them moving forward. It was a great session and looking really forward to the works that they're going to continue to do. There was a walk for veterans fundraiser that happened on Saturday, as well as the 60th anniversary of the Courtney Air Park. And then L'Arche had their fundraiser that night. On Sunday, the Glacier View Lodge had their walk and fundraiser. Again, an amazing organization. And Monday night, as part of the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder month, I was invited to attend the meeting at Wache for families that are working on that. And then today I attended the Child Development Society AGM. So it was a very busy few days after UBCM. So at some point, hopefully we'll be able to relax a little bit. But again, just really big kudos to everybody and all the work that's gone in preparing for UBCM and the work that was done there. So with that, we'll move into the in-camera resolution. All right, all those in favor? And motion carries. All right,